I never thought I'd be the person who finds their husband half naked with someone else. But here I am, it happened at my son's 7th birthday party. That's not even the worst part. The worst part is that I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just stood there in the doorway of Peter's childhood bedroom, watched him and his ex-wife fumbling with each other's clothes, and then I walked back to the living room and cut the cake. Let me back up. I'm 27. Peter is 37. We've been together for 6 years, married for 3. We adopted our son Jack when he was 4. I love that kid like he's my own blood. Jack calls me dad. Peter and I are a family, or at least I thought we were. Peter is bisexual. I've always known that and I've never had a problem with it. His ex-wife Allison is 37, same as him. They divorced a year before we met. The divorce was apparently amicable, but his family never really accepted that they were done. Peter's mom and dad are pretty homophobic. They tolerate me because Peter is their son, but they've never missed a chance to tell him he should get back together with Allison. They say things like you had a good thing with her or Jack needs a mother figure. I just gritted my teeth and smiled. Jack has a mother figure, his grandmother on Peter's side is involved, and my own mom is great, but they kept pushing. 2 weeks ago we went to Peter's hometown for Jack's birthday. His parents live in a small town about 3 hours from us. We planned a party at their house with Jack's cousins and a few of Peter's old friends. I was nervous because they always walk a line between civil and cold with me, but I wanted Jack to have a good time. I spent the morning wrapping presents and baking a cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, Jack's favorite. We drove up Friday evening. Saturday afternoon, the party started. Everything was fine at first. Jack was running around with his cousins and I was helping set up the food table. Then I noticed my mother-in-law slip out the front door. I didn't think anything of it. 20 minutes later, she came back with Allison. I froze. I hadn't seen Allison in over a year. She smiled at me like we were old friends. I wanted to ask why she was here, but I didn't want to make a scene. Jack was laughing with his cousin. So I just turned back to the cake and pretended everything was normal. I spent the next hour with Jack. We played tag in the backyard. I helped him open presents. I took photos. That's when I realized Peter and Allison were missing. I thought maybe they were in the kitchen getting drinks, but then I heard a door close upstairs. I told Jack I'd be right back. I went inside and climbed the stairs. The door to Peter's old bedroom was cracked open. I pushed it gently, and there they were. Peter had his back to me, his shirt half off. Allison was facing him, her hand on his belt. They were kissing. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. I didn't make a sound. I just turned around and walked back down. I don't know how I managed to stay calm. I went back to the party, clapped my hands, and announced it was time to cut the cake. Jack was so excited. We sang and he blew out the candles. I helped him slice the first piece. People were eating and chatting and I was smiling like a robot. By the time Peter and Allison came downstairs, most of the guests were getting ready to leave. Peter saw me and his face went red. He pulled me aside into the hallway. "What the hell?" he whispered. "You cut the cake without me? That's disrespectful." I looked at him. I didn't raise my voice. I said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went silent. His mouth opened and closed. I didn't wait for an answer. I walked back to the living room, took Jack by the hand and said we were leaving. Jack asked why. I said it was time for his birthday dinner at the hotel. He was okay with that because we were staying at a nice place with a pool. I packed our bags in 10 minutes. Peter followed me to the car, but I didn't look at him. I put Jack in his car seat and drove off. At the hotel, I ordered pizza and watched cartoons with Jack until he fell asleep. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. That was 2 weeks ago. I've been staying at my sister's apartment ever since. Peter has been calling and texting nonstop. First he said it was a mistake. Then he said Allison kissed him, not the other way around. Then he said it didn't mean anything. I told him not to contact me except about Jack. But last week, I got a call from one of Peter's cousins. She's always been nice to me. She said there's a rumor going around the family. Allison is pregnant and she's claiming the baby is Peter's. I felt like the floor dropped out. I called Peter immediately. He didn't answer. I texted him, "Is Allison pregnant?" He called me back an hour later. His voice was shaky. He said, "I don't know. She says it might be mine, but we only did it that one time and she said they were just kissing." "Kissing doesn't get you pregnant, Peter." He got quiet. Then he admitted that they had sex that afternoon. He said it was a one-time thing, that Allison had come onto him, that he was weak. I asked him if he believed it was his baby. He said he didn't know. I told him I wanted a DNA test. If the baby is his, I want a divorce. He started crying. He said he loved me, that he didn't want to lose Jack. I said, "You should have thought about that before you slept with your ex-wife at our son's birthday party." I moved out officially 3 days ago. My sister helped me pack. Jack is staying with me part of the time. Peter has visitation. I've been sleeping on an air mattress, but it's better than being in that house. Yesterday, I got a text from Peter's mom. She said I was being unreasonable. She said Allison is family and I needed to accept that. She said Peter made a mistake, but he's a good man. I didn't reply. I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like I'm in a fog. But I know one thing, I deserve better than a husband who cheats on me with his ex-wife and then blames me for cutting the cake wrong. That's where I am right now. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him, and honestly, I don't think I should have to. That was the first story, and honestly, it wrecked me. But then I remembered another one that made my blood boil in a completely different way. It's about a boss who thought he could just dump his whole family on me for a week, and the CEO who treated me like dirt. This one's about workplace power trips, and let me tell you, if you think crazy only happens at home, you haven't worked for a guy named Dick. I'm a senior manager at a mid-sized company. Been there for over a decade. I've seen people come and go, but nothing prepared me for the audacity of my coworker, Bob. Bob was the CEO's golden boy. When his wife had a baby, she became a stay-at-home mom, and the CEO, I call him Dick because he is one, found that so admirable that he promoted Bob on the spot. Never mind that Bob started showing up later and later, sleeping at his desk, missing deadlines. He was a family man, so apparently that excused everything. I, on the other hand, was the CEO's mother. That's how he saw me. I'd been there longer, worked harder, never got a raise in 4 years. Then I had a baby myself. Silent demotion. No explanation, just my responsibilities stripped away like I'd committed a crime. The same week Bob got another promotion for being a good dad. I swallowed it because I thought staying quiet was the smart move. I was wrong. So Bob climbs the ladder, goes from reporting to me to being at my level to eventually outranking me. A year ago, he and his family had to move across the country for a family emergency, another promotion the second they settled. By a couple months ago, he was the highest level he could be, and I was just the office mom who never complained. Then he texts me, not calls, texts out of the blue. Hey, I need you to house my wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January. If that doesn't work, maybe the company can pay for their accommodations. I stared at my phone, gobsmacked, utterly gobsmacked. Let me get this straight, you haven't talked to me in months, you've been promoted over me 3 times while I got silently demoted for having a baby, and now you want me to host your whole family like I'm a free hotel. And you offer to ask the company to pay as an afterthought? Get the absolute fuck out of here. I didn't reply. I figured ignoring it was the professional move. But then my meeting with Dick came up. He didn't mention Bob's request directly, but he spent the whole meeting praising Bob's recent work on some project I'd actually done half the groundwork for. Then he looked at me and said, you know, sometimes it helps to be a team player, support your colleagues. I felt my face go hot. I knew what he meant. He wanted me to say yes to Bob. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and left. That was a few weeks ago. I started applying to other jobs that same day. The comments I got from friends online were brutal but accurate. I was underreacting. One person said, this is the problem with staying in toxic jobs too long. You get habituated to the chaos and your normal meter breaks. They were right. I'd been so used to being treated like a doormat that I didn't even realize how insane it was for a coworker to ask me to house his family for a week. And then there was the sexist undertone. Every time I tried to stand up for myself, I got labeled as emotional or on the rag. One of my husband's friends actually told him that women are crazy, and that's why so many of his buddies got divorced. Last year, one of those buddies died, and guess what? Turned out he was a cheating pose. So yeah, that excuse is thrown around way too much. I never hosted Bob's family. I never even replied to his text. I just kept my head down and interviewed. Last week, I got an offer from a competitor. Better pay, real respect, and no dick. I resigned yesterday. Bob had the nerve to act surprised. He said, but we were counting on you. I laughed in his face. That story taught me something. When people treat you like a doormat, they don't stop unless you walk away. And I walked. Now let me tell you about another kind of betrayal. This one's about family, cancer, and the sister who slept with my boyfriend. It's the one that made me realize some people will use the worst pain of your life as a free pass forever. I'm 25. My stepsister is 23. We've lived together since I was 4 and she was 3. We were close, extremely close. Then she got cancer when she was 14. She was sick for 2 years, then made a full recovery. During that time, my parents became overprotective of her and they asked a lot of me. I quit my volleyball team, threw a tantrum about it, but I got punished and I got a job to help with her medical bills. I drove her to appointments, gave up dances, included her in every fun activity I had. Most of it I did willingly. I loved her. I went to college, met Ben when I was a junior. We fell in love, moved in together after graduation, were together for 3 years. I thought we were serious. Then one day in July, I came home early from work. I walked into our bedroom and I saw my sister fucking him. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just stood there for a second, then walked out. I broke it off. Ben moved out. My sister apologized at first, but then she backed off. I thought she was giving me space. A week later, she called and asked to meet for coffee. I went, she sat me down and said, Ben and I are in love. We're telling you as a courtesy before we start posting photos online. I left her at the restaurant, didn't pay my portion of the bill. She later Venmo'd me asking for money. I blocked her. Then my parents called me to their house. They said I was being unreasonable. They brought up her cancer. She went through so much, my mom said. Can't you just be happy for her? I said. She slept with my boyfriend. That's not something you just get over because she had cancer 5 years ago. They didn't care. My dad said he was disappointed in me. He even planned a family dinner to talk it out, then stood me up. I sat in the restaurant for 45 minutes before I realized no one was coming. He later said he didn't want to be part of the drama. That was the moment everything changed. I cut them off. No contact. I changed my number. I moved to a new city. Last I heard, Ben and my sister got married. My parents still post about them on Facebook like they're the perfect family. I don't look anymore. It's been over a year now. Sometimes I think about the irony. She survived cancer and I lost my whole family. But you know what? I've built a new one, friends who don't betray me, a job that respects me, and I don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they went through something hard. Those three stories, they're all about people who thought they could take advantage of someone else's kindness or patience. The husband who cheated and blamed me for cutting the cake. The boss who expected me to host his family like a servant. The sister who used cancer as a free pass to steal my boyfriend. I learned the hard way that boundaries aren't mean, they're survival. I'm still figuring out the divorce. The DNA test for Allison's baby came back positive last week. Peter is the father. I filed for divorce this morning. Jack is staying with me full-time now and Peter has supervised visitation. His mom called me a monster. I hung up. And honestly, I'm at peace. Not the easy kind, but the kind you earn by walking through the fire and coming out the other side. If you're reading this and you're in a similar mess, just know you're not the crazy one. You're the one who finally said enough. Let me back up a bit because the story with my husband and his ex-wife actually started way before the cake incident. I'm 27, he's 37. We've been married for 3 years, together for 6. He has an ex-wife named Allison, same age as him, and they divorced a year before we met. I knew he was bisexual, never had a problem with it. I also never had a problem with Allison, at least not until she showed up everywhere we went. We have a son, Jack, who's 7. We adopted him after we got married, and I love him like he's my own blood. He is my blood now as far as I'm concerned. But Peter's family, they're a different story. They're homophobic as hell. His mom is always telling him he should get back together with Allison like our marriage is just a phase he's going through. Peter never shut it down either. He'd just smile and change the subject. I should have seen that as a red flag, but I thought he was just trying to keep the peace. 2 weeks ago, we were at his family's town for Jack's 7th birthday. We wanted to spend it as a big family, you know, make memories. His mom said she'd handle everything. I was nervous, but I thought it would be fine. Then Allison showed up in the middle of the party. My mother-in-law had invited her. I didn't want to ruin Jack's birthday, so I stayed quiet. I spent the whole time playing with Jack and his cousins, cutting up, being the fun dad. When it was time to cut the cake, I looked around for Peter, couldn't find him. I went inside the house, checked the kitchen, the living room, then I heard a noise from his old bedroom. I opened the door and saw them, Peter and Allison, taking their clothes off. They were about to sleep together in his childhood bedroom while our son's birthday party was happening outside. I stood there for a moment. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just turned around and went back to the party. Part of me wanted to destroy everything, but I refused to make it about me. Jack didn't deserve that, so I cut the cake, opened presents, smiled for photos. People were already leaving when Peter and Allison came back downstairs looking flushed. Peter pulled me aside and said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me, that was disrespectful." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went quiet. I took Jack and left. We went back to the hotel. I put Jack to bed, then I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. That was the first time I let myself feel it. I called my best friend and she said, "Get a lawyer, get a DNA test, cover your ass." I didn't think the DNA test part was relevant until I remembered that Allison had a baby 6 months ago, a baby girl. I'd never asked whose it was because I didn't want to know. But now I had to know. I hired a lawyer the next day. Peter called me 17 times. I ignored every single one. He showed up at the hotel begging me to understand. He said Allison came on to him, that his mom set it up, that it was a mistake. I said, "You took your clothes off. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." I asked for a DNA test for Allison's baby. Peter fought it. His family fought it. His mom called me a monster for dragging Allison through this. I didn't care. The test came back positive. Peter is the father. That baby was conceived 6 months ago, which means he'd been sleeping with her the whole time we were trying to adopt Jack. The whole time. I filed for divorce yesterday morning. Jack is staying with me full-time. Peter gets supervised visitation. His mom left me a voicemail calling me a monster for breaking up their family. I saved it for my lawyer. I'm not going to lie, I was a mess for a few days. I thought I was overreacting. But then I remembered the look on his face when I caught him. He wasn't sorry, he was just sorry he got caught. And now I'm thinking about all the other red flags I missed. The late work nights. The phone calls he'd take in the other room. The way he'd flinch when his mom talked about Allison. I should have trusted my gut. But you know what? I'm at peace now. It's not the easy breezy kind of peace. It's the kind you earn by walking through fire. And I'd do it again because Jack deserves to see what a healthy relationship looks like, even if that means I'm alone for a while. Let me tell you one more story before I go. It's about a different kind of betrayal, the kind that happens at work when you've given everything and they still treat you like a doormat. I used to work for a guy I called Dick. He was the CEO, and he had this golden boy named Bob. Bob got promoted every time he had a baby because he was a family man. Meanwhile, I got silently demoted when I had a baby. Same company, same standards, completely different treatment. Bob eventually outranked me. Then one day he texted me out of the blue. "Hey, I need you to house my wife, toddler, and dog for a week in January. If that doesn't work, maybe the company can pay for their accommodations." I didn't reply. Then Dick called me into a meeting and said, "Sometimes it helps to be a team player, support your colleagues." Was telling me to say yes. I didn't. I started job hunting that same day. A few weeks later, I got an offer from a competitor, better pay, actual respect. I resigned yesterday. Bob had the nerve to look surprised. He said, but we were counting on you. I laughed in his face. You know what I've learned from all of this? Boundaries aren't mean. They're survival. Whether it's a husband who cheats, a boss who treats you like a hotel, or a sister who uses cancer as a free pass, you have to walk away. It's the only way you get your life back. I laughed in his face, but the fallout wasn't over. After I said no to Bob, Dick called me into his office the next morning. He didn't even say hello. Just, I hear you refuse to help Bob with his family situation. That's disappointing. We're a team here and sometimes we have to make sacrifices for each other. I looked at him, this guy who had silently demoted me 4 years ago when I had my baby. He didn't even have the spine to tell me directly. Just moved my projects to other people, stopped CCing me on important emails, and when I asked about it, he said, "Oh, we thought you'd want to focus on your little one." My little one, like I was a mom first and an employee second. Meanwhile, Bob had 3 kids and got promoted every time his wife got pregnant. Dick literally said in a meeting, Bob is such a family man, he knows what really matters. I wanted to throw my chair through the window, so when Dick told me to be a team player, I said, Dick, I haven't had a raise in 4 years, I've been demoted. I watch Bob come in late, sleep at his desk, and get celebrated. And now you want me to host his wife, toddler, and dog for a week? That's not a team player, that's a doormat. He turned red. Watch your tone. That was the moment I knew I had to get out. I started sending out resumes that afternoon. I didn't say a word to anyone at work. The next week, Bob texted me again, so about next month, my wife needs a place to stay while I'm on a business trip. I can pay you $200. $200 for a week of hosting 3 people and a dog. I blocked him. Dick called another meeting. This time he had the HR director on the line. They said my refusal was creating a hostile environment because Bob felt unsupported. I almost laughed. Bob felt unsupported. I said Bob feels unsupported because I won't let his family crash at my house. That's not a work issue, that's a him issue. The HR director looked at Dick like she wanted to disappear. I got an offer from a competitor 2 weeks later. Better salary, better title, actual respect. I resigned on a Friday at 4:59 p.m. Emailed Dick and Bob and the entire department. I said, I'm leaving for a company that values its employees. And Bob, you're going to have to find someone else to house your family, maybe try a hotel. I packed my stuff and walked out. Bob's face when he saw me leaving, I'll remember that forever. He looked genuinely shocked, like how dare I have my own life, but the best part. A month later, I heard through the grapevine that Bob tried the same thing with another woman in the office. She said yes. And then her husband got sick and she had to host them anyway, plus her own family, and she ended up quitting too. So Dick lost 2 good employees because he couldn't stop treating women like servants. I don't regret leaving. I regret not doing it sooner. And just when I thought things couldn't get more twisted, my husband's ex-wife Allison started calling me. Not to apologize, to ask if I could be the bigger person and let Peter see Jack on weekends without supervision. I said, you mean the man who was sleeping with you behind my back while we were adopting a child? The man who got you pregnant? No, she said, that's in the past, we're trying to co-parent. I said, you're not co-parenting with me, you're co-parenting with your baby's father. I'm divorcing him, and if you call me again, I'll file a restraining order. She hung up. Then my mother-in-law called, screaming. Called me a monster, said I was ruining Jack's life, said I was selfish and bitter. I didn't even respond. I just let her talk, then I said, your son cheated on me with your ex-daughter-in-law on my son's birthday, in your house, while you watch the kids, and you're calling me bitter. Goodbye. I blocked her too. The divorce hearing is in 2 weeks. Peter's lawyer tried to argue that I shouldn't get full custody because I'm emotionally unstable. I laughed in the mediator's face. I caught my husband cheating, filed for divorce, got a DNA test, and kept working full-time. That's not unstable. That's what a parent does. The mediator agreed. Peter gets supervised visits every other Saturday at a center. He showed up late to the first one. Jack didn't even want to see him. He asked me, Daddy, why did Daddy Peter do that? I said, sometimes grown-ups make bad choices, but I will always be here for you, always. Jack hugged me and said, you're my real dad. I cried in the car, so that's where I am now. In the middle of a divorce, starting a new job, raising a 7-year-old who calls me his real dad. And I'm okay. Really. Because I finally stopped letting other people tell me what I owed them. The sister story, the boss story, the husband story, they all taught me the same thing. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You don't have to forgive because they had a hard life. You don't have to host because they asked nicely. And you don't have to stay silent while your boundaries get trampled. I'm done being the bigger person. From now on, I'm just the person who finally said enough. But that wasn't the only betrayal I've ever lived through. Let me take you back to a completely different time, a different mess. This one involves my stepsister, cancer, and the man I thought I was going to marry. My dad married my stepsister's mother when I was 4 and she was 3. We grew up in the same house, shared a bathroom, fought over the remote. We were close. Then when she was 14, she got cancer, ovarian, stage something. I don't even remember the stage numbers anymore, only that it meant 2 years of hell for everyone. I was 15. I quit the volleyball team. I threw a tantrum about it, got punished, and then I sucked it up. I got a job at a grocery store so the money could go toward her medical bills. I drove her to chemo appointments every Tuesday and Thursday. I missed my junior prom because she had a fever that night and I was the only one who could stay with her. I didn't go to any football games, any parties, any normal teenage stuff. If I did something fun, she had to be included. That was the rule. I'm not saying this to get a medal. I'm saying it because I did it willingly, mostly. She was my sister. She was sick. You do what you have to. She recovered. Full remission by 16. We celebrated, life moved on. I went to college, met Ben when I was a junior. He was sweet, steady, the kind of guy who showed up with soup when you were sick. We moved in together after we graduated, dated for 3 years. I thought we were building a life. He talked about rings. I thought about what color our kitchen cabinets would be. Then in July, I came home early from work. I was 25. I had a headache, wanted to lie down. I walked into my bedroom and saw my stepsister on top of him. My sister, on my bed with my boyfriend. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just stood there until they looked up. Then I said, "Get out." Both of them scrambled. Ben was apologizing, crying. She was crying too. I just kept saying, "Get out." They did. I broke up with him that night. He moved out within the week. She sent me a text saying she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that she would never do it again. I didn't respond. I thought we'd all just move on. I thought she'd give me space. But a few weeks later, she called and asked to meet for coffee. I said yes because I thought maybe she wanted to apologize to my face. Maybe we could fix something. We met at a little cafe near my apartment. She sat down, ordered a latte, and then said, "I'm telling you this as a courtesy. Ben and I are in love. We're going to start posting photos on social media. I wanted you to hear it from me." I stared at her. "You're in love with the man you slept with behind my back 3 weeks after we broke up." "It happened," she said. "I can't help who I love." I stood up. I didn't pay for my coffee. She Venmoed me later that day asking for $4.50. I didn't even reply. My parents called me into their house that weekend. They sat me down in the living room like I was a teenager. My dad said, "We're disappointed in you, honey. She's your sister. She has been through so much, she deserves to be happy." I said, "She slept with my boyfriend. She had cancer." My dad said, "You don't know what that does to a person. She's in remission, has been for 8 years. But the trauma stays." My stepmom said, "We need you to support her." I said, "Support her? She destroyed my relationship. I sacrificed my teenage years for her, my volleyball team, my prom, my time, and you want me to cheer while she dates my ex?" My dad said, "You're being selfish." I left. I didn't talk to any of them for 5 months. Then in October of the following year, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Ben. He said, "I need to tell you something. She told me her cancer had come back. She said she needed me. That's why I stayed with her. But I found out it was a lie. She never had a relapse. She faked the whole thing to keep me around." I read that text 5 times, then I called him. I said, "You slept with her while we were together. I don't care why you stayed. You lied to me." He said, "I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm leaving her." "Good," I said, "but don't contact me again." I hung up. I didn't cry. I just felt this weird hollow relief. Like I wasn't crazy, I wasn't the bad guy. She had used cancer, her own history, her own trauma as a weapon to steal my boyfriend, and when that wasn't enough, she faked a relapse. I called my dad and told him. He didn't believe me at first, then he talked to Ben, then he called me back and said, "I'm sorry, I should have listened." I said, "Yeah, you should have." I didn't go to their house for Thanksgiving, I didn't go for Christmas. My stepsister tried to send me messages through my mom. I blocked her. She created a fake account and followed me on Instagram. I blocked that too. Last I heard, she's living with a guy she met online. I don't care. I'm 27 now. I'm dating someone new, someone who doesn't have a sister. And I've learned that the hardest thing isn't forgiving. It's letting yourself stop feeling guilty for protecting your own heart. Let me tell you about another time I was asked to do something completely unreasonable. This time it wasn't family, it was my boss. I work at a mid-sized company. I've been there 8 years. I started as an assistant, worked my way up to a senior position. I was good at my job. I managed a team, met every deadline, kept things running while the higher-ups took credit. But I'm also a woman in her late 30s and I have a kid. Apparently that makes me the office mom. There's this guy named Bob. Bob is the CEO's golden boy. CEO is Dick and I call him that because he is one. Bob got married, had a baby, and his wife became a SAHM. Dick found that so admirable that he promoted Bob. Never mind that Bob started showing up later and later, missing meetings, sometimes sleeping at his desk. Bob was a family man, so he got a pass. I, on the other hand, had a baby. My workload didn't change. I came back from maternity leave early because they needed me. And what did I get? A silent demotion. They reorganized my department, moved me under someone with less experience, and didn't give me a raise in 4 years. Dick never said it out loud, but everyone knew I was the one who should be grateful just to have a job after taking time off. Bob was the hero for being a dad. So when Bob got promoted again and started outranking me, I tried to just focus on my work. I ignored the unfairness. I told myself I was being too sensitive. Then in December, Bob texts me. Not an email, a text. He says, "Hey, my wife, toddler, and dog need a place to stay for a week in January. Can they crash at your house? If that doesn't work, I'll ask the company to pay for a hotel." Gobsmacked. I was utterly gobsmacked. He didn't ask. He told me. He assumed I would just open my home to his whole family. A woman he barely interacts with, who hasn't gotten a raise in 4 years, who got demoted for having a baby. And his backup plan was to charge the company for his own family's vacation. I didn't reply right away. I took a screenshot and sat on it for 2 days, then I responded, sorry that doesn't work for me, I don't have the space or bandwidth. He responded 2 hours later, okay no worries, I'll let Dick know. That was a threat. He was going to tell the CEO that I refused to help him. Classic. And sure enough, the next morning I got a meeting request from Dick. Subject line, quick chat. No details. I walked into his office. He was sitting behind his desk like a king. Bob wasn't there. Dick said, so Bob tells me you couldn't accommodate his family. He's going through a lot right now. I was hoping you'd step up. I said, with all due respect, I don't think it's appropriate for a subordinate to host my boss's family. That's a personal favor, not a work obligation. Dick leaned back. You don't have kids. You should understand how hard it is to travel with a toddler. He needs support. I have a 6-year-old, I said, and I travel for work sometimes. I find a hotel, that's what hotels are for. His face tightened. I'm disappointed. I thought we could count on you. I didn't apologize. I just said, I'm happy to help with work-related tasks. Hosting is not one of them. He dismissed me, and for the next 2 weeks, Bob ignored me in the hallways. People who used to say hi looked away. I knew what was happening. I was being iced out. I went to HR. I documented everything, the text, the meeting, the pattern of favoritism, the silent demotion, the 4 years without a raise. The HR woman nodded a lot, took notes, said she'd look into it. Then she asked, have you considered that maybe this is just a personality conflict? Sometimes we have to be flexible. I said, flexible? He asked me to house his family for a week. That's not a personality conflict. It's entitlement. She said she'd get back to me. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything. Meanwhile, Bob started copying me on emails where he took credit for my team's work. Dick promoted him again to a position that requires him to travel constantly. And Bob's solution, he asked me again to watch his dog for 2 weeks while he's gone. This time over email CCing Dick, I replied to all, I am unable to care for your pet. Please contact a professional boarding service. Dick replied 5 minutes later, let us be a team player here. I didn't respond. I updated my resume that night. I've been applying for jobs for a month now. I've had 3 interviews, nothing solid yet, but I refuse to be the office mom anymore. I am not here to be everyone's emotional support employee. I am not here to house your family, watch your dog, or absorb your incompetence. I told my husband about it. He said, just say no, you're allowed to say no. And I did. But the retaliation is real. The silent treatment, the credit stealing, the cold shoulders. I don't know if I'll win this battle, but I know I'm not wrong. So if you're reading this and wondering whether you're overreacting to a boss who asks too much, you're not. They know exactly what they're doing. They're testing you to see how much you'll take. I'm done taking it. I had an interview yesterday with a competitor. Better pay, better culture, no golden boy. I'm waiting to hear back. If I get the offer, I'm out. And I'll make sure Dick knows exactly why. This kind of workplace bullying doesn't happen overnight, it builds. And you don't realize how broken your normal meter is until someone asks you to board their dog and you actually consider it for a second. That's where I was. I almost said yes because I was so used to being the one who fixes everything. But no, not anymore. I'm taking my own advice. And if you're in a similar situation, start looking. Don't wait for them to give you permission to leave. Sometimes the worst betrayals don't come from work. They come from the person you trusted most. I learned that the hard way. Let me tell you about my husband, Peter. We'd been together for 6 years, married for 3. I was 27, he was 37, he was my everything. He had an ex-wife, Allison, same age as him. They'd been divorced a year before we met. He told me it was amicable, that they just grew apart. I believed him. I had no reason not to. He was bisexual and I was fine with that. I was fine with Allison too at first. She seemed nice enough, but his family, they were a different story. They were homophobic. Every time we visited, his mother would pull him aside and say, you should get back with Allison. This isn't natural. Peter would brush it off, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. I let it go because I loved him and I thought he loved me. We adopted a son, Jack. He was 7 when all this happened. I loved that kid like he was my own blood. He called me dad. We were a family. 2 weeks ago, it was Jack's birthday. We went to Peter's hometown to celebrate with his family. I didn't want to go. I knew his mother would make comments, but Jack wanted to see his cousins, so I swallowed it. We got there Saturday morning. The party was at my mother-in-law's house. Balloons, cake, the whole deal. Jack was so happy. Around 2 in the afternoon, my mother-in-law announced that she'd invited a surprise guest. I should have known. Allison walked in the front door with a wrapped present. I froze. Peter looked at his mom, then at me. He didn't say anything. I didn't want to ruin Jack's birthday, so I just smiled and went back to playing with the kids. I spent the next hour pushing Jack on the swing, helping him open presents, laughing with his cousins. I kept glancing around for Peter. He was nowhere. When it was time to cut the cake, I went inside to find him. The house was big, old, with a lot of rooms. I checked the kitchen, the living room, nothing. Then I walked upstairs toward his old bedroom. The door was cracked. I pushed it open. Peter and Allison were taking off each other's clothes. Her shirt was already off. His belt was unbuckled. They didn't see me. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked back down to the party. I cut the cake with Jack. I took photos. I laughed. I was on autopilot. When the party wound down, people started leaving. Peter and Allison finally came downstairs. Peter walked over to me, red-faced, and pulled me aside. He said, "You shouldn't have cut the cake without me. That was disrespectful." I stared at him. I said, "I'm sorry, I just thought you'd be too busy getting into your ex-wife's pants." He went pale, didn't say a word. I took Jack's hand and walked out. We went back to the hotel. I put Jack to bed, read him a story, kissed his forehead. Then I sat in the bathroom and cried silently into a towel. Peter didn't come back that night. He texted me at midnight, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. The next morning, I drove Jack back to our house. Peter showed up 2 hours later. He walked in and said, "It's not what you think." She kissed me. I was caught off guard. I said, "You were taking your clothes off, both of you." He said, "It was a mistake. I'm sorry." I said, "I need you to leave." He left. He went to his mom's house. Then the calls started. His mother called me and said I was being dramatic, that Allison had always been part of the family, that I was keeping Peter from his real life. His father called and said I needed to be more understanding. My own parents told me to think about Jack, not to rush into anything. I didn't rush. I sat with it for 3 days. I watched Peter's face during the party. I replayed the image of them in that bedroom. And I realized I couldn't trust him, not ever again. I filed for divorce last week. Peter called me yesterday. He said, "I ended things with her. I told my mom I'm not going back. Please don't do this." I said, "You had sex with your ex-wife at our son's birthday party while I was downstairs. You didn't even apologize until I caught you." He started crying. He said, "I don't know what's wrong with me. I hate myself." I said, "I don't hate you, but I can't trust you. And I won't raise Jack in a house where he sees that." He said, "I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything." I said, "That's for you, not for us." I hung up. I'm sitting here now in our house looking at Jack's drawings on the fridge. He doesn't know yet. I told him Peter is staying with grandma for a while. He asked why. I said grown-ups need space sometimes. He nodded. "Kids are smarter than we think. My lawyer says I have a strong case. The infidelity is clear. Peter's family might fight for custody. They said I'm not Jack's real father because I adopted him, but that adoption was legal. He is my son. I will not lose him. This is where I am, alone, scared but certain. I thought I was overreacting at first. I told myself maybe it was just a kiss, maybe I was too harsh, but no, he chose to be with her. He let his family treat me like an outsider. He let me find him like that. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I deserve better, and so does Jack. But sometimes the betrayals don't just come from your partner, they come from your own blood. The people who are supposed to have your back no matter what. I learned that lesson the hard way, and it still stings every time I think about it. My name's not important. I'm 25, female. My dad married my stepmom when I was 4, and she brought her 3-year-old daughter, my stepsister, into the house. We grew up together. We were close sisters in every way that mattered. We shared a room for a while. We fought over the remote. We braided each other's hair. We told each other everything. She was my best friend. When she was 14, she got diagnosed with cancer, ovarian cancer. It was terrifying. She went through chemo, lost her hair, lost weight, spent months in the hospital. My parents were a wreck. They became hyperprotective, which I understood, but they leaned on me a lot. I quit my high school volleyball team because someone had to drive her to appointments and pick up the slack at home. I got a part-time job at a grocery store to help with medical bills. I missed out on dances, football games, sleepovers. Everything I did had to include her because my parents said she needed me. I didn't complain much. I loved her. I thought it was what family did. She eventually went into remission. She was 17 when she got the all clear. We celebrated. Life went back to something like normal. I went to college, got a degree, started my career. She went to college too, a different one, but we still talked all the time. When I was a junior in college, I met a guy named Ben. He was sweet, funny, ambitious. We fell hard. After graduation, we moved in together. We were serious. I thought we were going to get married. We'd been living together for 3 years when it happened. July, about 4 months ago. I came home early from work. My shift ended at 2, and I thought I'd surprise Ben with takeout. I walked into our apartment, heard noises from the bedroom. I opened the door without knocking. And there he was, my boyfriend, on top of my stepsister, on our bed. I froze. She looked up at me, eyes wide. He scrambled off, trying to cover himself. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just turned around, walked out, and sat in my car for 10 minutes. Then I went back in and told him to get out. He cried, apologized, said it was a mistake. She was crying too. She said she was sorry. I told them both to leave me alone. For a week, I didn't talk to anyone. I stayed at a friend's house. Ben moved out. My stepsister texted me a few times, apologizing, saying she didn't know what came over her. I ignored her. Then she called me and asked to meet for coffee. I agreed because I thought maybe we could talk it out, maybe get closure. We met at a cafe downtown. She sat down across from me, looked me in the eye and said, "I'm in love with Ben, and he's in love with me. We're telling you this as a courtesy before we start posting pictures on social media." I stared at her. I said, "You're serious?" She said, "Yes, we want to be honest with you." I stood up, walked out of the cafe, and didn't pay for my drink. She texted me an hour later, Venmo request for $4.50. I didn't pay it. I blocked her number. Then my parents called me to their house. They sat me down in the living room and told me how disappointed they were. My dad said, "Your sister went through so much, she deserves to be happy. Can't you just support her?" I said, "She slept with my boyfriend." My stepmom said, "It happened. You can't change the past, but they love each other." I looked at my dad. I said, "You can't be serious." He said, "We're having a family dinner next Sunday. We'd like you to come and be civil." I didn't go. I ghosted them for 3 weeks. Then my dad called and said he wanted to meet me for lunch, just the two of us. I agreed. I showed up at the restaurant and waited. He never came. He texted me an hour later, "Sorry, your sister needed me. She was having a bad day." I sat there alone, sipping water, trying not to cry. That was when everything changed. I realized I didn't have a family anymore. They had replaced me. They had chosen her, the one who stole my boyfriend, the one who broke my trust, the one who used her cancer history as a shield for every shitty thing she did. I went no contact for 2 months. No calls, no texts, no visits. I blocked them on everything. I focused on work, on my friends, on myself. I started therapy. I thought I was healing. Then last week, I got an email from my stepsister. Subject line, I'm sorry. She wrote that Ben had dumped her. He went back to his ex-girlfriend from college. She was devastated. She said she realized she made a huge mistake, that she missed me, that she wanted her big sister back. She said she was sorry for real this time. I read the email 3 times. I felt a flicker of something, pity maybe, or old love. But then I remembered the look on her face in that cafe, the way she said as a courtesy, the way my dad stood me up, the way my stepmom told me to just get over it. I wrote back one sentence, I hope you find peace, but I can't be in your life anymore. She sent me 3 more emails after that, crying, pleading, saying she had no one else. I didn't reply. My mom called me my bio mom, who wasn't in the picture much, and told me I was being cold. My dad left a voicemail saying I was destroying the family. I'm not destroying anything. They did that. They let her get away with everything because she had cancer when she was a teenager. But that doesn't give her a free pass to wreck my life. I still have nightmares about walking into that bedroom. I still can't listen to certain songs that remind me of Ben. But I'm not going back. I won't set myself on fire to keep them warm. I know this is long, but I needed to get it out. If you're in a similar situation, if your family is gaslighting you into accepting betrayal because of someone's past struggles, remember that you are allowed to walk away. No matter how much they guilt you, no matter how loud they cry. Sometimes the only family you have left is the one you build yourself. I'm working on that, one day at a time. And that's where I am now, trying to rebuild, trying to trust again. It's hard, but I'd rather be alone and whole than surrounded by people who make me feel small. But sometimes the chaos isn't at home, it's at work. And when it hits just as hard. I'm a woman in my late 30s. I've worked at the same company for over a decade. I'm good at my job. I've built a reputation. But the CEO, a man I'll call Dick because that's what he is, has always had a favorite. Let's call him Bob. Bob was a mediocre employee when he started. He showed up late, he slept at his desk, he missed deadlines. But then his wife had a baby and she became a stay-at-home mom. Dick, who is the kind of guy who thinks women belong in the kitchen and men are providers, found that admirable. He promoted Bob twice. While I, who had never missed a day, who had taken on extra projects, who had trained half the junior staff, got passed over for a raise for 4 years. Then I got silently demoted after I had my own baby. Dick's exact words in a meeting, "You're a mom now, we understand if you can't handle the pressure." I wasn't handling any less, I was doing more. But apparently having a baby made me unreliable, while Bob having a baby made him a family man. Fast forward to this December. Bob has been promoted 3 times in 2 years. He now outranks me. He moved across the country for a family emergency and got another promotion for it. He's basically unreachable. And then I get a text from him. It's December 3rd, 2025. The text reads, "Hey, we're coming to town for a week in January. Can your place host my wife, toddler, and dog? If not, maybe I can ask the company to put them up in a hotel. Let me know." I stared at my phone, gobsmacked. He didn't ask. He didn't even pretend to care that I have a life, a family, a house that's already full. He just assumed I would drop everything to host his entire household. And he mentioned the hotel as an afterthought, like it was a favor to me. I didn't reply. I went straight to my meeting with Dick, and sure enough, Dick brought it up. "So Bob mentioned he might need to crash at your place. That would be really helpful. He's doing so much for the company." I said, "Sir, I have a 2-year-old and a dog of my own. My house is not a hotel." Dick gave me this look like I was being unreasonable. He said, "I thought you were a team player." I walked out of that meeting and started documenting everything. The text from Bob, the meeting notes, the pay stubs showing no raise, the performance reviews that magically changed after my maternity leave. I sent out applications that night. Within a week, I had 2 interviews. One of them turned into an offer with a 30% pay bump and a real title. But I didn't just leave. I went to HR first, not because I expected them to help, they never do, but because I wanted a paper trail. I reported Bob for inappropriate requests, for creating a hostile work environment, for using his position to pressure me. I reported Dick for retaliation, for gender discrimination. I had emails, texts, voicemails. HR sat me down and told me they would look into it. I knew what that meant, nothing, but I had copies. I also had a lawyer on retainer. 2 weeks later, I gave my notice. Dick called me into his office. He said, "I'm disappointed. I thought you had more loyalty." I said, "I thought you had more decency." I walked out. Bob found out I was leaving. He texted me, "So you're really not going to help us out? That's cold." I didn't reply. I blocked him. I started my new job in February. I'm respected, I'm paid fairly, and I don't have to host anyone's family. But here's the thing, I stayed too long. I got habituated to the chaos. I thought if I just kept my head down, worked harder, stayed quiet, it would work out. It doesn't. The only way to win a toxic workplace is to leave. And I wish I'd done it years ago. So if you're in a job where you're being used, where your sacrifices are ignored, where your boundaries are trampled, start looking. You don't owe them anything. Not your loyalty, not your house, not your sanity. That's the update. I'm free now and I'm not going back, and that's where I leave these stories. Each one is a reminder. Betrayal comes in many forms, from a husband, a sister, a boss. But the answer is always the same. You walk away, you rebuild, you choose yourself. I hope whoever needs to hear that hears it.